was not present at that meeting.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve of the
I'll
Finance
second.
Committee from February 18, 2020.
And I'll second that motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Raise our hand for aye.
I'll abstain.
One abstention. Okay. The second item, probably our big item, is the property tax deferral program, known as Executive Order 7S. John Mayer, if you want to kick it off.
Yes, a week or two ago, the governor issued Executive Order 7S. And I guess Section 6 of it relates to a tax deferral or a low interest rate program to be provided to taxpayers, basically for the tax bills that will be issued as of July 1st. The deferment program would provide the taxpayer a 90-day grace period to pay instead of the 30 days currently, so it or 3 months deferred. So instead of having the bills due, say, by August 1st, they would be due by October 1st. Now, there's two ways the town can address that program. They could, there is a form that was created by OPM that taxpayers that are being harmed by the virus could come in and with the proper paperwork and proof of identification can request the deferred to be put in place for 90 days. The problem is this is paperwork that would have to get out to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer have to bring it in to the town hall, most likely to the tax department, and then the tax department would have to look at the paperwork and to check off the forms and so on, and basically approve it, and then we have to get it into our system. And then eventually that would impact how the bills would go out, changing it from due on August 1st to October 1st. Or the other thing is the town can just do a blanket approval of everybody that they would all be granted the 90 days or 3 months to October 1st. And then after that, the taxes would be due. And if they were late, they would pay an 18% interest rate. The other program is to lower the interest rate. It would allow the taxpayer, the bills would go out to the taxpayers and it would be due the same as always, August 1st, but they would be able to pay the taxes later and only be charged an interest rate of 3% instead of the 18%. And I don't know, Elaine can address how that impacts changing the rates on our Munis system for 3% for 3 months, and then we have to switch it back to 18%, I guess, after October 1st. And then if you did a combination of both, my interpretation would be the deferred program would require people to come in and request the 90-day deferment till October 1st. And then those that do not come in and apply for the deferment or do not get the deferment, then they would just have to pay the 3% for from making the payments for after July 1st to October 1st. So some of these scenarios are kind of complex programming, readjusting the bills, and so on. That is a lot of work for a little gain. Really the best for probably the taxpayer as well as for the town to administrate is just the straight deferred program and grant the deferment to everybody for 90 days. And the Finance Committee is reviewing this now to make a recommendation to the Town Council Monday night, because we got to file with the state of Connecticut which options or where the town is going to go with, and we have to get this to OPM by April 25th. So I leave that up to if Elaine wants to add anything or Mona. I'll turn it back to you, Alan.
I'll open it up for discussions to the two different options. Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I have a few questions. One of them is that in Executive Order 7S, there's the section on related to these two programs, but there's also some subsections about eligibility, like the eligibility of landlords. Do we have to define those as part of our approval of this, or is that the surrounding circumstances considered included within the existing draft that we have?
Well, I think the town can make a decision to open it up to everybody, and by doing that, it would take these applying forms out of play. But if we do go with the concept that the taxpayer has to come in and provide evidence of being harmed, beside the regular taxpayer, also there's a section in that form that they have to fill out for landlords, in which they have to show actually loss of revenue and so on. And again, that makes it kind of difficult. So I think it more has to be spelled out, because I think the state is giving leeway to municipalities to sort of open it up to other items and not just straightforward. They have to come in and give the proof. You can open it up and just give a blanket approval to everybody for 90 days.
Right, I guess specifically to the section C, it mentions that in order for the landlords to be eligible for that program, they have to offer commensurate forbearance to their tenants upon request. And I don't know if that's something that we would get involved in, or if that would be exempt from what we're presenting on council.
Well, I think if we require the landlord to come in and being harmed, or providing a 90-day deferral for their rent payers, then we get involved in maybe more than we really need to. In this case, where I believe there is a future later executive order which granted like the residential renters, I guess, a delay in maybe April and May's taxes for 30 days and so on.
Right.
So you're really getting into maybe a lot of paperwork that the landlord has to provide to show that they are granting a holiday in the rental payments of their tenants.
And then I also wanted to just get out there. So this will be all property tax in our town. It's covers commercial as well as residential, just so folks know who's eligible.
Yeah, it would be everybody. The tax bills would go out same as normal, but instead of saying July 1st with 30 days to get it paid by August 1st, it would just go out with the 90 days, 3 months to October 1st. And we'd be at the mercy of our taxpayers when they want to make the payments.
And then my last question was just some of our other nearby towns, Newington, I think West Hartford, approved both options A and B. Any advantage to doing that? To me, it seems that if we're allowing the deferral program, that's kind of a better deal for people impacted than paying, with interest. But is there something that that I'm missing? Why towns would be approving both of them?
No, I agree. What you're saying is that if you go out and say, okay, taxpayers, instead of 30 days, you got 90 days, that's pretty good. Why, by them giving both options, they're sort of forcing the taxpayers to come in to get the 90-day deferral. And those that don't, that pay late, then would only have to pay 3% interest instead of 18, where if we give a blanket approval to 90 days, it's like interest free for the first until October.
Yeah, I think because we're talking about not requiring people to come in and explain why they need it, then it takes out the reason for the second option, basically.
Right.
Jeff, you good, Chris?
Yeah, I was saying no further questions for me on that one.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the right way to go. John, maybe just talk a little bit about, because of the expected timing delay of the receipts of taxes, kind of how that affects how our town will operate, especially during those two extra months, and just what we have to do is, to plan for that.
I'll give her a brief response, and then Mona can she did a 6-month cash flow based on our July 19 to December 19th, and then she applied a few new additional expenses associated with debt. But basically, the escrow banks that are collecting the monthly payments from the tax, from the people that the property taxes as part of the mortgage loan payments, those payments would be coming in, and that's quite a few $1 million coming in that can help us tie over. Now, in general, we always say that in July, in the past, we would collect about $35 million of property taxes, but we would spend that money over the next 6 months. So the impact would be pretty close to break even until we get into the late September and October cash flows coming in. So we think we can manage our cash accordingly instead of being a prompt payer of our bills, to be happy with our contractors and so on. We may have to extend some of those bills out, but we feel that based on that money coming in, hopefully some of the taxpayers in town will pay on their normal schedule, which is earlier than the due date. We should be able to make ends meet. So Mona has a little more detail that she could probably expand upon.
You did a great job, though. So as John said, but we do start up the year usually around June or beginning of July with cash on hand to begin with. So assuming that we begin with the $5 million money in the bank, which is probably a conservative estimate, but we don't know where we'll end this year the way we're going. Also, we're looking, as John said, with the escrow bank. So that's about $9 million that's going to come in. So of the $38 to $40 million you should be getting for the first July, August that we're used to, 9 million of that should come automatically because the guideline says that the escrow banks are obligated to come forward. So we'd have the cash on hand plus the escrow banks coming forward.
And Mona, just quick
yeah.
on that point, even though the banks are giving 90-day deferrals of mortgage payments, they're still required to make their timely payments to us,
The
right?
escrow banks, yes.
Okay.
That's right. So with that in mind, we made an assumption on the cash flow that those, even though we're telling them they have October 1st or the 3 months to make their payment, made an assumption, hopefully on the conservative side, that 25% of those that did get the notice would still come forward, whether they be, business, commercial, some residents that will just come forth and not take advantage of the delay. So with that assumption in mind, and looking at the cash flow of the expenses, we start up July with the large debt payment that we knew we would have, but we do have the cash on hand and we have the escrow banks coming in. So July works very nicely. August flows well still. Where we get very snug in the cash flow process is around the end of September. It could bring us around like the $500,000 to $1 million level. But at that point, we're hopefully seeing those people that took advantage of the delay to come forward. And at that point, you should start seeing some of that come in the end of September, beginning of October, and then we get back to the same pace that we normally would have been. So you'd have at least the $28 to $29 million coming forward, and then still normal operations about 6.5 to 7 million per month. So I think we get close in September. And let's hope that that assumption of 25% is on the really conservative side.
Great. I imagine we'll technically lose a little bit of interest income, but with rates so low, it's probably wouldn't have been a big deal anyway. So
Yeah, we're seeing it anyway. The
Yeah.
interest is really dropping.
that's fine. Okay, great. Thank you.
I would just like to add to it. First of all, with the emphasis still on social distancing and not knowing when that's going to end, I think it's important to try to keep people out of town hall until the point that we do open. So offering this to everybody, I think, would be a positive way to go. John, what I think we've talked, and I'll mention it again. Maybe we could have our economic development director or whoever else you see suitable to kind of reach out to some of our top 20 businesses after we have this discussion Monday night and get a feel for which ones may be paying timely. You know, some of these businesses are operating as normal. Obviously, we do have some large rental properties in town that we may expect to see some delays there, especially if they're seeing
Okay.
rent deferrals. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement. So I'll entertain a motion to move this to the council agenda for Monday.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we move to Monday's town council meeting to approve a 90-day deferral to December 1st for all taxpayers in town for the property taxes.
I think it's October 1st, Jeff.
I meant October 1st. What did I say?
Thank you.
Sorry, I meant to say October 1st.
Yeah, I'll second for October 1st.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just had one item where it's more of a logistical question. So town hall is closed. What is the mechanism that we're thinking about that should this pass that people can take advantage of this program? And are we thinking about in the notes that go out with the new property tax bills referencing that in the mailer, or how are going to people know about the program and how do they take advantage of it should they need it?
I'll start it with when the bill goes out, Chris, it's going to have the regular date that the tax bill's assessed. And then the due date would change to, I believe, October 1st. So it'll be on the bill itself.
And also the mayor usually has a letter
Yeah.
in there, and that should probably be in the first paragraph as well. And well, when Elaine, don't you have to put out like a legal notice
Correct, yeah.
too? And then instead of saying, you would reflect the new dates in that legal notice as well.
So this is, Chris, open to everybody, regardless if they're affected or not. And we're kind of doing it on the honor system, saying, if you're able to pay, please do pay to help our cash flow.
Yeah.
But if you don't, we are giving the deferment.
So it's not even that it's open to everybody, but everybody's in by default, basically. They don't have to ask for it. It's just
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. That makes more sense. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Reserve capital and non-recurring expenditure fund report. Is that you handling it, Mona?
I think John wants to do that one.
Okay.
Yeah, just a few items that we did do. When you go down to town vehicles and equipment, about midway down, we did, I think at the last meeting was back in February, it was approved to do a lease purchase for the Parks Department on a Ford F-350. We acquired that vehicle a couple weeks ago. If you go further down in the school surplus line, remember last year when we closed out the books, we set up, we transferred money in here to cover setting up the IT, providing IT support at Mosier School, and we did the first 6 months, and we finished that, and now the Board of Ed's responsible for that support service if they want to keep the service on board at Mosier School. And the other thing is down towards the bottom there under sanitation, right above the town total, the sanitation and facilities lease. We did get a check when CRRA closed out and then became MURA, when they did their closeout of the books, they distributed surplus to the member towns, and we did get a little over $32,000 in. And we deposit the money in here, and that's going to be used to cover expenses associated with the transfer station in the coming years. And then the last one was in facilities. The council approved the lease for 12 months of the land next on Church Street, next to the town employee parking lot that we're going to use for swing space for the renovation of the community/senior center. So that's been set up for that. And other than that, I don't know if I mentioned last time, I believe it's the Booster Club for the football team provided a check of $15,000, which was matched by the Board of Ed, to put a electronic sign in front of the high school. I thought they were going to be trying to do it sometime this month, but with the way things are, it may have been delayed. So reallocated some of the school non-reoccurring funds to match the $15,000 from the Booster Club. And the last one relates to that other on the architect, where we did set up the $32,000 fee for the architect to do the design work at Stevens School roof. And I think that covers some of the activities since the last meeting.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Jeff, start with you this time.
No questions at this point, yeah.
Okay. Chris? No?
No questions.
Okay. Moving on, state aid to municipalities. I know we saw an email today with some positive words coming out of the bond council at the state level.
Yes, that was good news, wasn't it?
Finally.
Now we just have to see the dollars. So at least in this report, we did get the Mashantucket Pequot money a little bit early. That was supposed to be the 71,000 coming in April. So we did receive that in March. So that was, maybe that was the glimmer of hope that we needed, and hopefully we'll start seeing the town road aid as well as the municipal projects money. So we should hopefully be seeing that 300,000 town road aid money, as well as the 220,000 for the municipal projects. Because both of those were on the email that we received. So those would be the highlights for state grants at this point.
And we're still on track for the ECS for April. We haven't
For
heard
April,
anything
yes,
otherwise.
end of April.
Okay.
Haven't
Any
seen it
questions?
yet, but it's usually the April 30th, right on the date.
Okay. Chris?
I just had a quick question about, it's not actually the Pequot grant that we just got, but with the casino shut down for kind of the indefinite future, do we know what we're looking at for the upcoming year, and do we need to change, what we're accounting for in the upcoming budget?
I've had no indication. I'm not sure. John, have you heard anything?
No, with the legislature shut down for the past 2-3 weeks, we haven't heard anything budget related. So we're still just going off of what we received in February. But that could be a major cash flow problem for the state if the casinos don't reopen soon.
Yeah, 'cause I'm not familiar with the funding source for that grant, but if it's a percentage of their revenue, I would assume that they're taking.
Usually I thought it was always the slot machines.
I thought so also.
Yeah, I thought it was revenue related.
So it's a good point that they're they've been shut down. There is no revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeff, anything on this one?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Moving forward to the monthly financial report.
Okay, I'll keep going. So the first report we have is the tax collector's report. All right, tax collector, see if I do a good job. And you can see at this point, we're at 99.2% of the levy at this point. And we are also at 89.4% of the motor vehicle supplemental, a little bit lower than last year, but still not an area to be concerned of at this point. Although I guess considering our economy, we may end up just staying there and not moving much forward. I believe we still had collections in April, could bring a little bit forward. Probably point out, I'm sure it jumped out, which is the 100%, which is the 3-year average. That is the percentage of what we had budgeted. Again, we base our budget on a 3-year average of collection rates. So that is a good sign. We had a 99.2 was the goal for collection for this year. So since we've reached that already through March, we're at the 100%. So anything above and beyond at this point will just bring us 100% and a little bit forward. That should help us in the, not this year where we're going to budget for 2021, but the 21-22 year, that'll be part of that average. If there's no questions, I'll move on to other revenues.
I think we're good.
Okay. So this is a report through March. We should be looking at around 75% for the most part. Again, our current tax is at the 100%, which I had mentioned. State revenue, we talked about the town road aid and some of the municipal projects as well as ECS. So I believe at this point we are where we need to be with the state grants. I think I mentioned just a little while ago that the interest, although it's really well over the budget, we are definitely getting some low rates now. Anything we're having in is like well under like 0.25 and less at this point. So the next line that stands out would be the insurance revenues. Not that it's a large line, but the percentage looks a little concerning. And that's really just activity driven. Those are reimbursements we get on insurance activity, which is more workers' comp related. So we had a couple of claims that were just driving the revenue in that. It's a difficult line item to budget for. And other than that, I would probably bring down to conveyance. I think we had some good collections there. They're at 113% through March. In February, there were a couple of large conveyance transactions that occurred. The specific companies I don't have, but there were a couple of just large ones that stood out. To building permits is at 67%, and that's right about where it should be. We expect it to be at 2/3, and that's just where we'd like it to be right now. And I would probably just make a cosmetic apology in that column for the the dollars and cents in there. Not quite sure what happened that day.
I was hoping it was a comma.
I know. I did too. I looked like, oops, didn't want that. All right. So any questions on there?
Mona, just a question on the building permit fees with
Sure.
With a town hall being closed, but construction still being deemed essential. Are contractors still able to apply for permits online?
Yes,
What's
they
the
do.
system in place? So we're still able to keep moving forward.
We're still moving forward. They're doing it online, and we still have a couple that are, mailing their paperwork in. So there's still activity going in.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any question here? Chris, Jeff?
Nothing for me.
Okay.
Next, I will highlight the expenditures. Again, we're looking at about 75%, where it should be our goal. Just highlighting a couple of the areas, obviously in finance, that's at 58%. That's in the salary area because we have the vacancies situation there. Legal is at the 50%, but that's more of a timing of the processing of invoices, probably add some favorable situation as well. I would probably jump down to building department. probably about halfway down this sheet. That's at 68%. We've had a vacancy in the building director who retired, and we're filling that position from someone that had moved upwards. So we've got a little vacancy there. We're seeing a little savings. Also in the highway road maintenance, again, a little turnover of staffing in there as well. Sanitation, the 90%, I'm sure looks a little bit concerning, but that largest line item in there is sanitation. And at this point, it's 100% expended. We do quarterly payments to the MDC. So at that point, it's 100% to the MDC, which is the majority of the expenses. And the rest is about 3/4 paid through for the contracts for collection. And let's see, any other great highlights? I would probably go all the way toward the bottom with insurance at 96%. And basically, we're having the workers' comp and the LAP insurances are fully paid at this point. Again, we're making the quarterly payments on, so they're fully paid at this point. And at contingency at 40%, we actually this month had a large expense in there, an additional 100,000 for retirement. So we won't see that looking as positive in the next month. I think those are the highlights for expenditures through March.
Okay. Questions?
Is there any, I don't want to say good news, but are we seeing anything, any decrease in the expenditure side related to either energy costs or, fuel purchasing, because we are, they scaled down, I guess, the activity at the town hall buildings, either the school or the library, anything like that, that would be,
I'd say it's probably in
noticeable.
the, oh, yeah, I was gonna say, if anything, some part-time. Unfortunately, we had some part-time that were not regular hour positions, like at the library. I think we had the aquatic department, had like lifeguards and so forth. So there were a few positions that were part-time, that are not coming back since we're doing the work at home or the essential employees. At this point, we haven't really seen any change in the utility bills yet. So, but I think that'll be the following month's bill that we'll see any change in that. So it's kind of early to predict what that will do.
Thanks.
Kind of in the same vein of what Chris was saying, do we anticipate any drop of insurance costs or increase in our insurance dividend? Because like workman's comp, it's kind of hard to have a workman's comp claim if nobody's there, those sorts of things. Do we expect to gain anything on the insurance side?
Generally not, because like our workers' comp is a lot based on experience times salaries.
Right.
And so on. So each division sort of has a certain rate depending on their physical activities and so on. So it wouldn't be the savings in this current year. It could be in the future years because our claim dollars are lower, and then that therefore improve our experience rating. So we should have a lower premium probably in coming years as opposed to the current year.
Right. Plus, if the overtime is lower, that would help it as well, because they're going to base it on salary with overtime, and we'll see less of that now as well in the following year.
And
Thanks.
my question, I guess, would be similar on the expense side. Are we starting to see expenses that the town's incurring related to the COVID-19 epidemic? And are we tracking them so down the road we could apply for FEMA monies to come back?
Yeah. Yes, actually, they're coming through my office, and we're tracking them in a different fund. In fact, we just spent a couple hours today working on a webinar, and they're going to have like an online portal so we can start submitting our invoices. And they're saying at this point a 75% reimbursement. We're not sure at this point, but that's what the goal will be. So everything at this point that's even the slightest bit COVID related is not going to hit your general budget. At this point, we're going to put it through the separate fund and track it that way.
And roughly, you have a number to what we've spent to date?
At this
Yep.
point, it's really on the low side. I'd say it's even less than 20,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because a lot of the
Yeah.
departments had already built up their PPEs, I guess, protective equipment. Now they're starting to get low. And just like everybody else in the country, they're searching for vendors that can provide them with masks, gowns, and so on.
right.
I don't know, we do, I don't know if we have any other expenditures yet associated with the virus beside the equipment.
Now, when we
That would be-
replenish our PPE, will that be eligible for FEMA funds on the replenishment?
Yep.
Okay,
Because usually anything we spend from now until the end of December, is it that long?
Yes. Yeah, 6 months.
If it's, what do they call it, protective equipment or
personal
protective items?
protective equipment.
Yep.
We would apply, and as I said, I think Mona was able to tolerate the webinar on how to apply for FEMA money, but it does seem like they're trying to streamline it and make it easier, and they encourage you to file quarterly. Don't
Right.
wait till the end of the project. So I think they're changing a lot of their rules that they had in the past, where they even used to come out and inspect things, where I don't think they're going to be able to do that due to the size of this disaster being 50 states instead of, 4 or 5 counties.
Right. And the last question I got, the Central Connecticut Health District, have they reached out? I mean, are they adequately funded at this point? Is there anything that we need to be doing for them from a monetary revenue expense side?
At this point, we paid our yearly fee. We pay in 4 quarters installments, and we made those payments, and we haven't heard anything from them about any shortfalls that they're having, and requesting the 4-member towns to provide additional funding as of yet. Again, we have a public safety meeting on Monday, similar to this meeting, and Charles Brown from the Health District will be there. And we could pose that question to them, how they're doing financially at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Just, Alan, I think just following up on your first question, if we could, I don't think we need to do a deep dive every time, but I would be interested in seeing what that running total looked like the next time the finance committee meets, if that could be added, just
Sure,
as far as
not a
with that
problem.
COVID. That'd be great. Thank you.
Definitely.
Probably what we would do is bring that money in and maybe have some seed money transferred in from the non-reoccurring fund to sort of match the 25% that we don't have. But as we're saying, if there's an opportunity to buy something, you're sort of paying a premium for the masks and the gowns and other items. But if we have an opportunity to buy it, they're taking advantage of it. And so as we said, we thought it'd be easier to track it as a special revenue fund instead of having it in the budget, in the general fund budget.
Yeah. Easier to track it and audit it separately.
Great, thank you. I guess we'll move on. Item 6, legal bills update.
Yep. Yeah, there's a schedule in there. I think it's up through March. We might be missing one attorney's bill. I missed that came in later. But I think we're doing below compared to prior years, especially in our appeals cases. Personnel may go up a bit. We had some expenses in March and in April that should cause that to go up slightly. But other than that, I think we're doing okay. We should be no problems coming in under budget on this on the legal side.
Excellent. Any questions on the legal side?
Not for me, no.
Good. All right. And then we had a couple of things to add under the other. Let's see. A little bit less space at home, so bear with me a second. I think the two items we still have to discuss that we'll add under other are the Stevens Roof and HVAC replacement project architect agreement.
The Board of Ed's Facilities Committee did an RFQ to hire an architect to provide services relating to their roof HVAC replacement project. They went out to bid really back in February, had 4 interested architects. They interviewed them and decided to go with Jakunski Hughes Architects out of Berlin for $32,000. It was approved by their facilities committee, and then it was brought to the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed approved it as well. So in general, contracts are usually signed by the town. So this is more of a formal formality of getting approval of the town council to sign this agreement for Jakunski to do this, provide this architectural services for the roofing project.
And this would be moved to the consent agenda, correct?
Yeah, and then I'll put on the consent agenda for Monday night.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion on the architect agreement.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the architect agreement for the Stevens School roof and HVAC replacement project, and allow town manager to execute an agreement as such with between the town of Rocky Hill and Jakunski Hughes Architects of Berlin.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? No.
Yeah,
All
I just
those-
had a question, because this is a pretty substantial, well, the $32,000 isn't substantial for the architect services, but the overall project is, pretty large in a time of uncertainty. I don't know that we've yet decided to formally go through with it. Will these architectural services hold up if for some reason the roof repair has to go to the next year's budget?
Yes, what he's doing is also designing plans for the roof replacement. And once once the project gets approved by the state for the grant, which is in this case 46% reimbursement, you have to bring those plans down to the state and they review them. And then once they approve the plans, then you can go out and get do an RFP to get a contractor to come in and do the roof replacement. So what they're really just doing now is designing the plans so that they're ready to be brought in either this year or next year. The plan shouldn't really change that much from year to year.
Thanks.
Okay. I guess we'll move to vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no abstentions, no one opposed. The second item under other is a draft of the budget schedule for the town budget. And I believe, John, that was what you had emailed over today.
Yeah, it's done a draft, getting some ideas from the finance committee. And then it will also be included in the town council packet for Monday night. But basically, the governor allowed towns an additional 30 days to do their budget. So we took advantage of that for a couple weeks to try to get a better flavor on how this shutdown's going to go and so on. But it looks like we're going to be shut down for another few weeks. So this schedule just saying that the proposed budget will be submitted to the town clerk tomorrow. We'll put it up on the town website on Monday. There'll be a discussion item on the agenda for Monday night, talk about the budget, and then what we're planning to do is have the Board of Ed come in on April 28th, which was originally scheduled months ago for them to come in to talk about their operating budget as well as their request for capital improvements. primarily the Stevens School roof project. And then then 2 days later on Thursday, we'll do our town public hearing that is sort of required by the town charter, even though there must be an executive order there somewhere saying that towns don't have to do it because of the situation. But we would do it same here electronically. We'll advertise it so that people know that they can make public comments by just sending an email to John, and he'll provide them with the ID to get in. So they will be able to provide comment after I do a presentation of the proposed budget. And then May 4th is a regular town council meeting. But then the next 2 weeks, pretty much it's wide open. So if the town council wants to review departments' budgets, recommending this year, maybe just look at some of the larger budgets, not be too concerned about the smaller budgets because pretty much nothing much new there besides salary increases. And the goal is, again, the 30 days is good through May 15th. So we still have to adopt the budget by May 18th. So I think it's more after the public hearing on April 30th, how the council wants to go about reviewing the departmental budgets to get to that point where the town can adopt a budget as well as a mill rate.
And John, the public hearing portion, because I think the public component is very important, even though in past couple of years, we haven't had a large number of people, but you never know who's going to show up to attend. Can we add a methodology that somebody who may not have internet access could send in a written comment that could be read into the record on their behalf?
Well, I think John has an email that he's having people send in the request to. We could maybe use that as either requesting access to make a public comment or to provide the town council with an email written statement that would be read into the record, and as well as passed out to the town council before the start of the public hearing. So we could probably use that same ID to get requests to access to address the meeting, or send an email for their comments to be read into the record.
Okay.
Alan, I think you may have started off by asking, for folks who aren't online. I mean, there are some people who, their only computer might be when they go to the library. Is there a way for them to submit like a written comment, a voicemail? I mean, I'm trying to think of a way that, for people who don't have the same resource that they might normally take advantage of, do they have providing their feedback?
Well, as long as the town hall's not open, they can always come, and there's phone numbers down at the doors, and they can call the town manager's office, and we can come down and get a copy, or they could chance the postal service and mail it, and hope that we get it in our mail Monday, that Thursday mail batch at the latest.
So they could send a letter, and that would just be
they can,
addressed to the town manager.
Yep, town manager or town council, making some reference to the budget, comments on the budget or something. So it's distinguished, but luckily our mail has dropped off quite a bit also during this year. So we should be able to identify it pretty easily.
Thanks.
Thanks for the follow-up on that, Chris. Okay, so John, we just need to approve this to move to the council for Monday.
Yes, for discussion purposes. I guess it's basically figuring out how the council wants to review the budget after the public hearing.
Okay.
So you'd probably have to come up with some workshop dates. And if someone has interest that they want to have the department head of a certain department come in and explain something and so on, we should go that route there. So, as I would say, it would be pretty nice to say that we may like to have a workshop on the 6th, and in that group, we'd like to see the police, the fire, and parks. And then maybe if you want to do something on the 12th, a couple other departments, and then maybe wrap it up on the 14th, 13th, or 14th. And then we'll develop the resolution for the adopted budget amounts, as well as set the mill rate so that it can be adopted on the 18th. So it's just a matter of how many workshops the council would like to have. Now, again, you're going to get the Board of Ed out of the way first. So that's usually at the end of the process before we revisit. So there's no extra time available for revisits and so on. So sort of need to have sort of a game plan maybe developed Monday night. And you do have quite a few days, and especially I guess time is more flexible now when we do these Zoom meetings too.
Yeah. Okay, so Monday night we'll develop which departments we want to bring in on which dates.
Yeah. That'd be
Okay.
good.
And part of that discussion could also be that some of the departments that don't have large budgets and don't have any changes, where in the past we've brought them in, may not need to bring in unless
Yeah.
there's questions pertaining to that department in general.
Yeah.
Sometimes we use those opportunities just to ask a question about a department and
Yeah.
get to meet the department heads. But
Yeah.
okay. So do we need a motion to move this, or we're just going to
No,
to approve?
it's more if you are okay with this, I'll just put it in the agenda packet as is, with the understanding that think about how you want to run the workshops in the those first 2 weeks in May, with a goal of May 18th to adopt something.
John, just a quick question. And I don't remember the normal sequence of events, but do we normally have the public hearing before any of the workshops, where this year would be after the Board of Ed and then before the others, or does it matter really? Or
Well, tradition has it that we pass the budget out at the end of March, and then the following week do a public hearing, and then that sets up for the workshops. But with this taking the 30-day extension, as well as trying to follow some of the charter rules, that when it's turned into the town clerk, the public has 5 or 6 days to review it. And so that's why with the Board of Ed already is set for the 28th, it was just easier just putting it after that to meet all those charter requirements with the days of notice and so on. So it's out of order this year because of the situation we're in.
okay, that's no problem. Okay, thanks.
If there's no objection, we'll just move this to the council for further discussion.
Sure.
Okay. Any other items, John, that I'm possibly missing?
Nope.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh,
to
maybe
adjourn.
Elaine has something. She's
Oh, I'm sorry.
holding back.
Elaine, did you want to pipe in?
I'm all set, thank you.
Elaine's going to be visiting you guys at the next meeting with her suspense list. That
Okay.
the tradition, like nothing else, where we move them from one list, from active to dormant type of things, but we're still trying to collect them.
Okay.
Yep.
So you might get that electronically as opposed to paper copies, because usually it's a number of pages, especially the motor vehicle section.
Mhm.
Sure.
So you may send it to you electronically, and unless you want to let a paper copy, let us know.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, electronic's fine.
I'm fine with electronic as well.
Okay.
All right.
See you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.